Hey guys, so, Pejman back, and today we are going to be talking about Squid Games. So Squid Games has been a huge kind of like success, and there has been a lot of talk about not only the success the producer has had, having tried so many times to get this and failed, and yet finally not only getting recognized for his work, but also getting spread across the world as one of the top watched shows on Netflix. I have chosen originally not to watch Squid Games. I thought the concept was pretty ridiculously stupid, and I have kind of looked at the way it kind of portrays society, like just from the understanding of the show itself. And then all of a sudden, my wife decided she wanted to watch it. So I was like, you know what? We're going to watch this from beginning to end so that we can see what it's about. Never judge a book by its cover. So you know what? I said maybe there's a lot of psychology and intelligence in this, and we're going to watch it. And as a result, I've watched every episode and have come to my own view of what I think of it. Now, if you haven't watched it, I would recommend, if you plan to, I would warn you that I might spoil some of the concepts found in it. So just as a courtesy, don't watch this video till after. But for me personally, I thought that the idea of the show itself was made popular more by the media campaign of how hard this guy tried to get his show on Netflix and how it finally made it, and more of that success story than it was really about the show itself. While the show's concept itself is nothing new, this is no different than Hunger Games and some of these other previously done shows where, hey, people are basically competing for some kind of prize or freedom. The main thing about Squid Games that make it somewhat more unique is that the games that the characters play are more focused around childish games that you would play as a child. However, they're done with an extermination at the end, so it makes it much harder to kind of treat them as children's games because they're basically, you die if you fail. And the issue that I have with the movies, or should I say with the series as a whole, is not really per se that there is something wrong with the show, its effects, or its dubs. The dubs are just awful. Outside of that, like looking past that and understanding the psychological concept of the game, you start to notice some very high inconsistencies about the way the producer views the world, which is where I highly disagree, to a point where I said this is just a really bad representation of how the world would theoretically act in this. You see, the basic premise is that these people that are competing have basically no way out. So they voluntarily want to play despite having seen that people die as a result of playing. So therefore, they have forfeit their value in their human life. As a result, they're willing to just die for the sake of basically having a better life. So this concept isn't new. There's plenty of people without purpose, there's plenty of people without money who would face such a challenge at some point in life. The part where the game gets a little bit ridiculous is the idea that the people that are basically looking at these characters as pawns and as entertainment are wanting a fair match, meaning they're basically saying that these people should have a fair chance at winning, when in reality, they're not really treating them as equal. They're giving them a false hope that they're equal in the sense that they have a chance to become an equal. They base this ideology on the concept that having money gives you basically a rank in society and an opportunity to obviously belong to society and therefore not be miserable, which is true. So that concept in itself is very validated and very excellent. The part where the show really fails is the character development around each and every person. You see, when each and every person is faced with death as basically being imminent or more likely because they're the weaker character, in many cases, in many specific scenarios, they either take their own life, they turn against each other, or ultimately become, fighting for the fittest, meaning they really look at their own survival and stop caring about their human values, which basically shows that towards the end of the film, when you actually get to reveal who is actually behind all this, you start to realize that his view is basically the same, that no one cares for anyone, everyone is out for themselves, which is also a real interpretation of how life can be looked at, because our experiences in life never had to be, to begin with, about others, and we've been fed this garbage in the world, which again is about like that we are here to help each other, we are a nation where we are going to hold hands together and so on and so forth. And it's really not true. Even in the United States, where the idea of freedom and the idea of teamwork and the idea of capitalism and everything else comes together, you can significantly see flaws that every single concept is only based upon we will come together when there's a common interest at heart, not so much when we have an interest in someone else's interest and therefore we're there to help them. So even in most advanced Western countries, you will still notice that there's a significant gap in the way people view the world and in their intent, even though at first may seem to be honorable, is really hidden behind some level of personal gain. We see this in politics, we see this in the world and everything else. So what is so wrong with Squid Games if everything I've just said obviously fits into the narrative that the director is creating and the producer is creating? Well, the issue is their character development doesn't really hold consistent about how human beings evolve. If you read my book, Third Circle Theory, where I talk about each human lives into 3 circles, one of awareness, self-awareness, and consciousness, and each human has an opportunity to evolve past these circles and into giving birth to their true self, then you would understand that the way a human being evolves differs significantly from the way the show portrays it. Now, there are very slight variations where some humans, just like we've seen in the world of, for example, pro athletes, where they make a lot of money and they're not able to understand how that money impacts their life, therefore just emerging themselves in a societal role where they lose all that money and end up back at square one. This ideology of taking money and basically using it, over abusing it, and not understanding it comes to the point that you can't really force your way through society. You still have to learn to interact with it, even if you're given an upper hand with a lot of money. In the specific movie, though, however, the fairness argument doesn't hold weight for any of the actual organizers of the actual games. But in addition to that, the character development becomes really weak. Meaning you start seeing acts of kindness that are constantly rebuffed by other people's hate, but you also start to see that characters that should have grown into Survivor and should have owned their earnings still don't. And as a result, when you start the movie, you follow this main character who's a terrible father, who prioritizes really poorly in his life, who can't seem to make a good decision, and who still always bets on the wrong things. Now, in addition to that, you see this character go through this change where he goes to a state of self-accountability, which goes, I want change. So this is what the first circle is, which is the only way we overcome awareness is to have the opportunity to overcome circumstance. So he accepts that basically he's going to overcome his circumstance and he jumps in the games voluntarily, basically going for it. The problem, though, is throughout and even in the end, he doesn't actually allow the games to help him evolve past that, because he ends the movie being a horrible father and once again neglecting his child when given a chance. 2, he has neglected his mom as a result and therefore lost the only thing he was fighting to begin with for. And 3, here's the other part. Even when given a choice to basically now adapt into society given his new financial status, he still chooses yet again the wrong decision of going and waging it all in the wrong bet, showing, again, the argument here that people don't change. So, Squid Games makes sense if your view of humanity is very poor, meaning you see people as non-changing beings, non-evolving beings, and incapable of making good decisions. Now, if you believe that a person doesn't change, then you might have had a lot of great things in Squid Games that have related to your own view of the world. However, if you're me and you see each human as an opportunity on a continuous basis to overcome themselves, to make different choices and create a path or trajectory of change, one that is evolutionary, you start to realize that what this movie is promoting is the exact angle of what is keeping the world down. So first off, you start to realize that the producers are basically saying, once you're rich, you're an asshole. Once you're poor, you're an asshole. Your money just infatuates what or who you are, which there is truth to. However, what you're also seeing is that the producer really focuses on the idea that characters don't change and people don't change. If you're good or bad, that can't change. Now, if we watch an alternate movie called Cloud Atlas, we would see that there's, other worldviews that are more geared towards, in cinema anyways, that are more geared towards an evolution of a life, even if it is across multiple lifetimes, showing that change is possible. Now, I think that these particular movies are significantly more impactful and relevant to what is possible in a human life. Having journaled my own journey through my last 20 years through my 2 books, Third Circle Theory and Gate of Choice, I can tell you that at each and every segment of our life, we are aimed and faced with choice. Choice is the ultimate tool we have. It isn't what gives us the opportunity to be conscious, but rather the tool we use to navigate the world of consciousness. And that tool is very, very powerful. And yet, in this particular movie of Squid Games, the producer focuses heavily on the idea that even though characters are continuously given choices, they continuously make the wrong choice, and that choice never changes at any point of the game. Even towards the end, when the person refuses to kill another person and wants to end the game, the dynamic doesn't make any sense because both of them would ultimately be dead. So, the entire concept as a whole just shows the really poor character development and the unlikely follow-through to how human mind evolves. Meaning, any single human being put into that context of the game would act very differently than how these characters acted. And so this is why there are some consistency for some characters, but the core of the four main characters truly doesn't resolve that way. So I had a hard time really establishing Squid Games as a valuable watch that had some really good alternative opportunities to think different. And instead, I saw it more as a morbid way of basically characterizing the world. And while I'm sure there will be great character development past Squid Games into, further seasons and things like that, I just feel that at this point, the show was not only a waste of time, was not like anything of that was exciting when it comes to cinema, but I also thought that the portrayal of it and its impact in the world was more negative than it was positive. And we're seeing this today with kids trying to play that game and punch the shit out of each other instead of actually doing something of value. So basically, it enhances the act that violence is not only okay, which is okay. I understand violence in movies, but I don't understand the idea of connecting children's games to a movie like that and not understanding its impact on society in the influential world we live in today. So sometimes I believe some movies are better left unpublished. And while there is freedom of speech or expression of speech, I just think that at some point, you as a creator in the world, whoever you are, that you create movies, that you create books, that you create anything, you really have to start honing in on the impact of this movies in society in general. And while everyone's goal is always to get rich and everyone's goal is always to bring their worldview into the world, I would also argue that sometimes that responsibility comes second because that director himself is struggling to basically go from the first to the second, and this was his entry into the second, his way into wealth, which was interesting, but at what cost? And remember what I talked about the second circle. Once you're there, you choose to basically manipulate the world or help it advance. And in this case, unfortunately, I give Squid Games not only 2 thumbs down, but I just would not recommend anyone to take that for anything of its face value. So if you like videos like this, make sure you, of course, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. This isn't a movie review channel, but I do my best to speak and discuss my worldview as a conscious being and some of the differences and help you understand why perspective is also the key to change, which is why we have choice. So if you have the choice in hand and you have perspective, then your choices improve over time. The greater your perspective, which is ultimately a sense of awareness, the greater and faster you move through the self-awareness phase and into the conscious phase. So make sure you like, turn on notifications, and leave your comments. Did you love Squid Games? Why did you love it? Why did you think it was so engaging? I'd love to hear your thoughts and continue discussion in the comments. And of course, turn on notification as you never know when I'll drop another video.